The Captivity of Sarah Blake by a renowned author of horror and suspense bestseller. Sarah Blake was a fearless journalist. While investigating the disappearance of 3 women in a forgotten coastal village, she never imagined she would become part of the story herself. It all began with an anonymous letter signed only as the last prisoner. The letter led Sarah to Windmore, a village surrounded by cliffs and ancient legends. The locals avoided contact with outsiders. When she asked about the missing women, they averted their eyes, as if mentioning their names invoked something dark. She stayed at the boarding house of Meredith Gray, a silent elderly woman with glassy eyes. The room was damp, filled with mirrors covered by black sheets. They watched through them, Meredith murmured one night, trembling with fear, without explaining further. In the early morning, Sarah heard footsteps in the hallway and children's laughter, even though she was the only guest. Peeking through the keyhole, she saw a silhouette standing at her door, motionless. When she opened it, there was nothing there, just a bloody handprint on the wall. Determined, Sarah followed the clues from the letter. In the forest north of the village, she found an ancient chapel in ruins. Inside, there were names carved into the pews. Among them, the names of the missing women. On the altar, a lit candle and a portrait of herself. Frightened, she ran to the police station, but the local sergeant just laughed. "You arrived too early. Your time is not today." Unable to get help, she decided to leave the village. However, all paths seemed to lead back to the same crossroads. Sarah realized she was trapped. Time distorted. The church clock always marked 3:13. The villagers disappeared during the day and appeared at night, walking in circles like sleepwalkers. The village seemed to exist in a parallel reality, shaped by pain. Searching through the church files, she discovered a photo from 1892, for women identical to the current missing ones, alongside a hooded figure. In the background, the same boarding house where she was staying. Timer did not pass. It only repeated ancient horrors. That night, Sarah was drawn to the boarding house's basement by a soft song. There, she found a cell with walls scratched by nails and desperate prayers. On the floor, bones. When she tried to leave, the door closed by itself, trapping her in the dark. Voices began to whisper her name. Through the cracks, eyes glimmered. A pale figure, in a tattered dress and hair covering its face, emerged from the shadows. "You're next, Sarah." The creature dissolved into smoke before she could react. Sarah found a diary hidden under the floorboards. It belonged to Margaret Blake, an ancestor of hers, who disappeared in the same village over a century ago. All women of the Blake blood are called to captivity. The sacrifice never ends. Desperate, Sarah tried to set the boarding house on fire, but the flames extinguished inexplicably. The village, alive, protected its secrets. Her face began to disappear from the mirrors. It was as if her existence was being slowly erased from reality. Over time, she stopped feeling hunger, thirst, fatigue. She was becoming part of the village, like the others before her. The villagers now greeted her with a dark respect. They knew that Windmore had gained a new guardian of the eternal secret. Decades passed for the world outside, but in Windmore, Sarah never aged. Forgotten by time, her name was given to a street in the village. Those who dare to visit at night swear they hear screams coming from the abandoned boarding house on the hill. A new journalist, intrigued by the historical disappearances in Windmore, arrives in the village. Curious, she stays at the old gray boarding house. There, she finds a portrait of Sarah Blake on the wall, with eyes that seem to follow her around the room. The Black Island was avoided by everyone on the coast of Belmare. It was said to be cursed, where ships sank for no reason and screams could be heard at dusk, coming from the forest that covered the center of the island like a dark veil. Laura, an investigative journalist, decided it was time to uncover the truth. After hearing about the recent disappearance of 3 fishermen, she set out with a small team towards the island, driven by a strange sense of urgency. The boat rocked on the dark waters as the thick fog made visibility nearly impossible. When they stepped onto the black sand of the island, the radio stopped working. There was no signal. The island enveloped them in oppressive silence. They found the first sign of something wrong near the beach, a broken camera with dried blood on the lens. It belonged to one of the missing fishermen. Laura kept it, her hands trembling. Something terrible had happened there. As they moved deeper into the forest, they felt watched. The branches cracked, even when the wind ceased. A smell of wet earth and rotting flesh lingered in the air, and whispers seemed to come from all sides, as if the island had a life of its own. They arrived at an old wooden cabin, hidden among twisted trees. The door creaked open, revealing walls scratched with strange symbols and an open diary on the table, where the last resident wrote about voices and ancient rituals. At night, they were awakened by screams. Laura ran outside and found one of her colleagues, Marcos, in a trance, walking towards the sea. His eyes were white, and he murmured words in a forgotten language. He was never seen again. With each passing hour, the island seemed to transform. The trail shifted, the trees closed in behind them, and time appeared to slow down. A watch that Laura carried stopped exactly at 3:33, the same time marked in the cabin's diary. They found a hidden cave behind a dry waterfall. Inside, ancient inscriptions told the story of a cult that worshipped an entity from the abyss, banished centuries ago, but still alive beneath the island, waiting for a new sacrifice. Pedro, the sound technician, disappeared inside the cave. His screams echoed for minutes before ceasing abruptly. When Laura and the rest of the team entered, they only found his recorder, still functioning, with a guttural laugh in the background. Laura realized that the island was not just cursed. It was a living prison for something ancient, hungry for fear. Each visitor was part of a cycle, drawn by curiosity, consumed by the mystery. She didn't know if she was next. They tried to flee back to the beach, but the boat had vanished. In its place, there were deep footprints in the sand, leading to the sea. The wind whispered Lara's name repeatedly. She felt as if she were being called by something that knew her well. With one last sign of courage, Laura returned to the cabin and wrote everything in the ancient diary, hoping that someone would find it one day. There, she sealed her fate, determined to confront the entity and end the cycle, or perish trying. Months later, it is said that a rescue team found the cabin intact. The diary was there, but no sign of Laura or the team. The last page had only one sentence written in blood. "The island now knows me by name." Since then, the Black Island is even more avoided. Fishermen report seeing a woman by the shore, hair blowing in the wind, looking towards the mainland. Always at 3:33. Always still. Always watching. No one dares to approach. But legends grow. They say Laura managed to seal the entity, for now. Others claim she is the new guardian. But one thing is certain. Those who hear the call of the island never return the same. Or never return.